my number 6 is The Hateful Eight. There's so much talk about this movie in terms of it being not Tarantino's best. And that's the most flattering way of expressing some people's criticisms of the movie.
Right.
Look, it's a movie that is about hate and intolerance. I find it interesting how Tarantino, while still maintaining his very kind of adrenalized style of filmmaking, how he seems to be becoming a more socially conscious filmmaker, but not so much that he beats you upside the head. I mean, he never promotes The Hateful Eight as an issues film, and it doesn't play like an issues film. But in so many respects, it does have reflections to the kind of racial intolerances that we're dealing with today. Every character in the movie is reprehensible, but Sam Jackson is kind of the most humanistic of all of them, which also I find startling when people complain about Tarantino's constant use of the N-word. First of all, he writes characters that would not hesitate from using that word.
Right.
And also, as Sam Jackson has said in interviews, Sam Jackson's always given the smartest roles in the movies that Tarantino.
He gives him his best work. I mean,
the smartest, most empowered characters are the ones that are given to Sam Jackson typically in Tarantino movies. I can't tell you that I understand exactly every nuance of this movie, but the reason why I have it in my top 10 is because this is the one movie out of all of these 10 that I chose that I think that I will gain the most from repeated viewings of. I think this is a movie that I can stick with for a while and be rewarded on repeat viewings. There are times in the movie where the dialogue feels, or the scenes feel like some of the stagecoach stuff at the beginning felt a little too monotonous and stagey to me. But the 8 characters, for the most part, are very clearly defined. There were surprises in the movie. I was surprised by the turn of events in the movie. People complain about Tarantino's voiceover in the second half. When haven't you been aware that you're watching a movie when you watch a Tarantino movie? I mean, that's part of the fun. That's part of the fun of Tarantino's movies.
Exactly.
He says, "Look, I'm in on this with you guys," or it's kind of a conspiratorial thing almost. And I love, there's a sense of playfulness in the movie, but it is truly about hate, and it's also, in some weird way, about uniting as well, as exemplified by that Lincoln letter, which is a fraud. I think it's a very rewarding movie, and I think people have been far too dismissive of it because there seems to be this group of people that just despise Tarantino now, and they're just wanting him to fail. And that used to not be the case. But I find that that's always the case with movies, filmmakers that are popular. People can't wait to turn sour on them for whatever reason.
It's my number 5.
Okay.
You want to wait till we get to that to talk about it?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. First thing I got to say, it's that this is the first time that Tarantino uses a full original score. And it's Ennio Morricone, and I keep listening to the score in my car. I go between that and Star Wars, but but it's a great score. I mean, it is a truly great score. I want to say this: not since 2007 have we had 3 movies like this. The Hateful Eight, The Revenant, and to a lesser extent, Bone Tomahawk are sort of like these very survival, horrible, elements and everything. The Revenant, I think, being the best out of the 3. But you go back to 2007 when you have the assassination of Jesse James, There Will Be Blood, and No Country for Old Men. You have these 3 films that are linked in their intensity and their violence, but also their darkness. It's absolutely right. I don't think I've seen a better film that says more about today about race relations than The Hateful Eight. The first half of that movie. If I have a criticism of the movie, is that in the stagecoach sequences, Sally Menke is missed. I think she could have trimmed some of the fat off of that.
That's my main complaint with it, is that I feel like it's just too long, but and maybe just a tiny bit too stagey. but I was tremendously entertained by it, and was completely surprised by a lot of the things in it, and I liked it a little better than Django Unchained, frankly, and what I really adored about it too was just its. Well, I loved its cast. I thought the cast was just superb in it. I thought everybody.
And what a stark contrast between Anomalisa and this one for Jennifer Jason Leigh. I mean,
absolutely,
such a sensitive, compassionate performance in Anomalisa, and then the Hateful Eight, she comes up with this disgusting character. That is so brave on the opposite end of the spectrum. I mean, it's terrific.
Yeah, no, it was a great experience at the movie for sure.
It was Samuel Jackson. I think definitely, Tarantino always gives him just these great juicy parts, and he's wonderful in them. And Jennifer Jason Leigh, the whole cast is great. This is Walter Goggins, though.
Walter Goggins, yeah.
He's on fire in this movie, and he is superb.
And by the way, I mean, and at the end of it.
Look, there are people who are always going to hate Tarantino, I think it originates in just pure jealousy. They're waiting for him to fumble. I don't think he fumbled as much as people think. I still think the movie he really fumbled with is Death Proof. I think that's his only really, blemish. And, let's be honest, Death Proof, if another filmmaker had made it, that would be a great film, but because it's Tarantino,
and by the way, Death Proof actually works when it's part of Grindhouse, not on its own, as a movie on its own. Yeah. But people need to remember that Grindhouse was the movie, and that's the movie we should be judging.
You're absolutely right. Right. But no, definitely. That was my number 5. So.
Yeah. And there's something poetic about the end of it, which I'm not going to give anything away. But
no, we can't, because I thought it was going to end. I thought there'd be some crazy ending after that.
But that two characters who you previously thought were at polar opposite extremes are united in a way, but united in the face of really grotesque brutality.
Yeah.
It's a strangely touching way to end that movie. I mean, it's as sentimental as that movie gets. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, what are we? Number 5 for you, Dean? Is that where we are?
Number 5. Okay. Number 5 for me is Asif Kapadia's Amy, which I think is the best documentary of the year. I, went in my experience with Amy Winehouse was really only Rehab and maybe a couple of other songs, and then for me, she was always basically just a figure in celebrity reporting.
Right.
I used to say that they were reporting on her downfall, and for me, I kind of dismissed her without really listening to the music very deeply. And so when I was sitting in the movie, which is largely constructed from Winehouse's personal video recordings and so forth, which I thought was a very interesting way to go. But I felt personally implicated in her in her downfall, because I felt like I had reduced her to kind of a punchline in some ways. And so this is a movie that made me feel extremely guilty. I know, we talked about this a little bit earlier this year, but, and I know, Jamie, you didn't feel like you had done anything to her, but but for me, I did feel that way. Yeah, you did. I mean, for me, I felt that way. I felt like I was one of those people taking the photographs and turning her life into pure torture.
We did talk about it. We did talk. I remember talking about this. Yeah.
And it's also a movie that it's the rare documentary that can move me to tears. But that scene with her and Tony Bennett, And
she's so
I think
excited and so nervous, and yeah, it's beautiful.
You know, and it's her last recording, I think, that she did in her career, and he's coaching her through it. He knows how great she is, and she's just not sure of herself. You know, next to him, and that is just one of the most touching scenes of the year. And plus all of the, you know, personal family, you know, roilings that are going on beneath it with her father and her shitty boyfriend and everything. It's just a movie that makes you feel a tremendous sense of loss. And also, ever since then, I have picked up her music, and I really, really appreciate her greatness much more deeply than I ever did while she was alive.
You know, if the movie only did that, it would accomplish something worthwhile. Which most music documentaries you could say that about. I mean, you said that about Nina Simone, and that documentary really brought forth her artistry. So that alone is an accomplishment. But Amy, for it to, you know, artists are tremendous empathetics, whatever the word is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, empaths.
And
yes.
Yeah, and they're very. You know, so when you're dealing with fame and all of this kind of stuff, which watching that movie, I truly felt that she didn't want all of that. She didn't need all of that. Like, her artistry was personal to her. And so when you're flooded with all of that, you can be very susceptible to self-hatred and self-doubt. And you're right. I mean, we're all implicated in. I think I understood it from a cultural standpoint. I don't get off on and I don't think you do either, Dean. I don't get off on the coverage of people on the verge of implosion. But
I mean, that's kind of one of our. We're not interested in that stuff on this show.
Media,
I mean,
like
if you listen to any of the interviews that we do on this show. We're never interested in sort of gotcha.
TMZ. We're not TMZ.
Yeah.
We don't care. And
years ago, when Britney Spears shaved her head and she was going through, and the cameras were on her 24/7, they wanted her to kill herself right on camera.
I know.
Right.
Oh God, it was horrible.
It's the same mentality with Amy Winehouse, because saying that she's clean and she's doing great, I mean, that doesn't sell papers. They want her to disintegrate right in front of their eyes. And there's something about the culture that yearns for that. That's the bigger theme of Amy that I think makes it so successful.
Yeah, and I mean, if she had a moment to breathe without that boyfriend nearby and without the people sucking off of her, you know, if she had the sort of wherewithal that, say, somebody like Lady Gaga has now, where Lady Gaga now has kind of has backed off from it all and has actually embraced another side of her musical genius that is not pandering to you know, what's popular on the charts. And so that's allowed her a moment to step back and breathe and actually find out what's real and valuable in what she does.
Amy Winehouse didn't have that chance. Yeah.
Yes. So.
Okay, my number 5, and we're going to go a little past 8, I'm afraid to say. So stick with it. My number 5 is Steve Jobs. I love Aaron Sorkin. I'm an unabashed admirer of Aaron Sorkin. I love the unique structure of the film, and I love that it's about one of the most successful entrepreneurs of modern times, but the movie's really about failure. I think the movie understands that success ultimately comes from your experiences with failure. I thought that it's an incredibly wordy script, as most Aaron Sorkin scripts are, and yet made beautifully cinematic. And I love the performances in it. I love how precise they are, how they rehearsed each act for 2 weeks, or however long they rehearsed it for. I think Michael Fassbender is terrific in the movie, And I think the movie has the best line of the year, which is "I'm poorly made" at the end of it. And it's a great line not because it's snappy or any of that kind of stuff. It's a great line because in that single line, it encapsulates that character, the character that the movie is portraying of Steve Jobs. That's the theme of the movie, right there in that line. And that's what makes it a great line.
I agree with you 100%.
So I was astounded by it all the way. I thought it was a terrific movie. That's all I got to say about it.
I agree 100% with everything you said. And God, in another year, this would definitely be in my top 10 because I really do love the film, and I love Michael Fassbender. And Seth Rogen is just a revelation here. Not that I don't think he's a very good comedic actor, but we don't get to really see him do a lot of serious work. And I just thought he was wonderful. And I thought, Kate Winslet. I thought there's nothing that. First of all, the movie goes by so quickly. I sometimes think you don't have room to breathe. Even I mean, it's just it's constant and it's so racy. It's a great movie about a very difficult genius. I could not turn away from it. I was just so engrossed in it. But it's also, I think, a career high point for Danny Boyle personally. I mean, just a really awesome movie.
I really appreciated it for its great dialogue, which was no surprise, and its cast, really everything, and particularly also I loved the look of it. It was not a movie that I was expecting to appreciate that aspect of it, but I really was kind of left kind of breathless by it, like you were, Jerry. And it's not in my top 25, but it is in the movies of note this year. And for me, with Sorkin's dialogue, I think the reason that it's not in my top 25 is that I can feel the artifice in Sorkin's dialogue sometimes, and I don't know, it affects me in some way that's negative. But I'm not a huge fan of the Newsroom for that particular reason, and also of The West Wing. So, but then again, there's movies like Social Network and Moneyball, where his dialogue really does sing for me. So, but in this particular case, while I appreciated the content of the words, it was the patter, I think, that really distances me. So, but that said, I mean, I still liked the movie and thought it was tremendously worthwhile, and I'm really sorry that it didn't do as well at the box office, but as better at the box office than it should have.
Yeah. Jerry, you're number 4.
That would be The Wedding Ringer. No, I'm joking. I'm sorry. No. I've never even seen that. But speaking of Michael Lewis, Moneyball, I picked The Big Short. And I really love this movie. It's my kind of movie. But I think what I find very interesting is, was it 25 years ago, Brian De Palma directed very much against type, The Bonfire of Vanities. Somewhat of the same kind of story, financial hooliganism, but on a much different, bigger canvas in some ways. And he was roasted over the coals for it. Here, we have Adam McKay, who was not the first choice, you would think, to bring about Michael Lewis' The Big Short to the big screen. Very, very funny director, very intelligent, but he's not the first choice. Well, he does it with flying colors. This is based on a Michael Lewis book, who's a very good author, Moneyball, The Blind Side, and so on and so on. And he has the cast of casts: Christian Bale, Ryan Gosling, Brad Pitt, Steve Carell. Just everybody. Everybody's in this movie, and it's just a movie about the financial crisis. There's some very heavy, big, complicated stuff. They managed to make it cinematic. Not an easy thing to do. And of course, there's some interludes that involve Margaret Robbie explaining something while in the bathtub drinking champagne. Selena Gomez explaining something. They have Anthony Bourdain explaining something. These interludes are very nice. But it's just a very engrossing film. And Mark Johnson our friend Mark Johnson posted something about watching again last night on Facebook, in which the movie's compared to American Hustle and The Wolf of Wall Street, and rightfully so. I don't know how it has an American Hustle vibe. It definitely has a David O. Russell vibe to it. And I do like American Hustle a lot. I know it's not a very popular film. I know people don't like that movie. I do, but that's probably why I like this movie, because it reminds me of that. It has that vibe to it. But I just think it is just, I could like Steve Jobs. I'm just so engrossed in it, and just I thought it really made to light what went wrong in the 2008 financial crisis, how we led up to that. And it's really kind of frightening because we're sort of heading in that direction, it looks like, again, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong. But
I think the movie thinks we're heading that way too. Again, I really wanted to love it. I am into the subject matter, but ultimately I found that it was information that was delivered better to me. And Charles Ferguson's Inside Job, I really felt like that particular movie, that documentary, actually detailed the machinations in this cataclysmic, economic downturn, a little bit more clearer than this film did. So. I mean, I was, I felt kind of overwhelmed at times with the sort of landslide of expository dialogue and.
Well, it has that Il Divo. It's like Il Divo in that way. There is a lot of exposition dialogue, and you really have to be. Now, I thought about Inside Job. That's a very good analogy. The other movies I thought of that are on par with it are maybe Arbitrage and Narrow Margin. And you can't help but think of these films, all three of these films from recent memory.
Narrow Margin? What is that?
Narrow Margin.
Not Narrow Margin.
Margin Call.
Margin Call.
Call.
Margin Call.
Yeah.
Sorry. I got like part of the title right. But it's not the thing that sells tickets, and even though The Big Short is getting great reviews and is award contender, it's not exactly lighting the box office on fire. Because it is, you are asking the audience to do a lot of heavy work.
It's a difficult movie, and I do have to hand it to Adam McKay, by the way, who's not, again, as you said, is not the person that you would think of to do this kind of movie, but he really did carve out a different image of himself as a filmmaker in the film. Yeah. And I have to say one thing. The one thing that really kept me going, the one element that really kept me going through it was Steve Carell's performance, which I thought he was just absolutely astoundingly superb in it.
Yeah,
he was great. It's a tough movie too because there's not a lot of people to like in it.
Because they're all doing a despicable thing. I mean, it's about a group of characters that are capitalizing on the financial mortgage crisis. Which is interesting, those are your protagonists. And yet again, this is another thing about this movie, this year in movies, is that there's a lot of movies where there's no one necessarily to root for. They're all different degrees of terrible. I think that Adam McKay worked really hard to maintain interest in this complicated subject. I mean, and he made a very energetic film for me. I was entertained by it. But I could feel the devices he was employing just to keep people awake.
Oh right,
yeah, and I do like the idea of the pop culture celebrities.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's not when you have to do that though. You already are sort of you're admitting defeat almost. I mean, in some ways.
I do like that you use the pop culture celebrities to talk about the complicated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And as we were talking about truth in movies, I like how also that it subverts are criticisms that might arise by, it didn't really happen like that. And it says, no, really, they do turn to the camera a number of times and go, it didn't really happen like this. But, I like that sort of fourth wall breaking aspect of the movie.
Yeah. Ryan Gosling, though, it's so nice to see him laugh. Because we don't always get to see especially his first movie, I saw him in The Believer. It's so nice to actually see him, in a humorous part for a change. Because I think he's having a field day with it.
Number 4, Dean. You're number 4 now?
Well, we've already talked about it. It's Creed, and again, just to reiterate, I was completely blown away and surprised by Creed. It just like with Jerry, it just didn't occur to me this could be a great movie, and so we've really already covered it. But I mean, also I just have to say, I loved the music in Creed. I thought that that composer did a great job of echoing the Bill Conti score without mimicking it, really, and so that was just one of the elements that I didn't talk about previously.
And it's a score that announces itself as a score. I mean, I think it's been a good year for film scores. Where they've broken a trend, where they're not all these dissonant tones and crap, where they actually announce themselves as integral to the movie, and that's a great one. Okay.
So 4 for
my
you.
My number 4. My top 4 are all about humanism for me, like what it is to be human. And you know me, like if a movie touches me, it tends to be my favorite because I go by that more than the intellectual. But here is a film that I thought tickled both parts. Here comes the knockdown drag out. My number 4 is Room.
Oh, no.
Good for you. All right. No, good for you. All right. Dean, I'm not as crazy as you think I am. Okay. I just have some Brie Larson, but okay. But that's besides the point.
One of my most hated movies of the year.
Oh, here we go.
No, there's no reason to go back and forth on it. But a movie for me that was actually about what it means to be human. I loved that only like less than half of it takes place in the room, and the chief part of the struggle is what happens out of the room. But while they're in the room, it brings an interesting dynamic of our adaptability as a human species, and how that's different for a child than it is for an adult. And then when they come out, how the real prison for the mother, at least, is the freedom that she experiences all of a sudden, and how that's an unexpected psychological turmoil in her life, and how the child, because of just the acceptance of children, is able to basically say goodbye, Room. So from a sociology aspect, I thought it was a fascinating movie. From an emotional aspect, I thought that it brought forth a lot of great moments and great points. I think Brie Larson is terrific in it. The kid, there's that one scene where I found him to be shrill when he's screaming about the story that she's trying to tell him.
Right.
But outside of that, I thought that he was very, for the most part, well restrained and not too precocious and all that. I thought it was a good child performance. And I do like the escape scene, the way it was directed, because I do think there are touches in the movie, like when he jumps off the truck trying to escape. There's that moment, there's a shot that happens there where you realize he just touched grass for the first time. There are like little moments like that. First of all, I'm fascinated by that kind of story, the captivity, what that does to you, what that denies you, how you deal with that, how you adapt to that. So from an emotional and psychological standpoint, I really did appreciate Room, and I was ultimately, by the end of it, I was very moved by it. The whole thing of it being a rape child, I'm sure that that's going to be dealt with in the reality of those characters beyond the confines of the movie. But in the moment, for that time being, I mean, what do you do about it? How do you deal with it? You had the father that just couldn't take it. But it is a rape child. It's a child born of rape. So what kind of conversations need to happen? You're not going to get rid of the child. The child isn't worthless because of that. So I didn't know what more they needed to draw from that.
Well, you do a good job of convincing me. I don't think that I'm going to go back and check it out again anytime soon. Because I really thoroughly felt that it was unpleasant and I don't know, an irritating film, and I really didn't think that they. I didn't think that they plumbed the depths of the issues in it. So you know, people love it. So what can I say?
There are movies like that.
But I appreciate
it. It was me with Birdman last year, dude. Like everybody raved about that, and I didn't like that. So we all have our turn at,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, number 3.
Yeah, number 3.
Whoever wants to go.
Number 3 for me comes from Argentina. It's really a 2014 movie. Again, it was nominated for Best Foreign Film last year, but it really didn't hit the States until this year. And it's Damien Ziffron's Wild Tales.
Great movie.
Is such a great film. 6 segments devoted to revenge in all of its glory. So mesmerizing. This might be the only anthology movie that gets every single story just right, and every single story has its own power to it. Some of them are funny, some of them are horrifying, one of them is extremely exciting. But one of them, the first one, happens before the credits even arrive on the screen, which is also a big surprise. But it is impeccably performed all the way through, and I just really, I mean, seriously, if once you see this movie, you just won't forget it. You'll immediately want to go and watch it again. It just really gets your heart pumping very quickly, and I really had so much fun watching it. There are very few movies this year gave me as much strange exhilaration as this one did.
Yeah, no, it's a great movie.
I hesitate to say anything about the stories that are involved because there's so much surprise.
The wedding story is hilarious. I mean,
which is the final one and probably the longest one.
Yeah, hysterical.
Great supporting performance by the female in that role in that particular one, and just exhilarating. I mean, like it with a capital E, and I really can't say it any better than that. So, I mean, Wild Tales is absolutely number 3, and it really was contending for number 1 until the last minute. I can't recommend a movie higher than I can this one.
Year? What won last year for best foreign film?
Ida.
I like Ida a lot, but I like this even more. I thought this should have won.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that if this movie had been screened earlier last year, I think I just don't ever think it got any kind of footing critically. I still, even this year, I see it mentioned occasionally on top 10 lists. but not to the extent that I really get the feeling that a lot of people haven't seen it, and so I really can't stress strongly enough that if you love movies, you have to see Wild Tales. It's just a one of a kind movie.
Jerry, your number 3.
Oh, my number 3, Jurassic World. No, sorry, I'm joking. Sicario. Sicario is my number 3. In another year, it would have been number 1. In another year, it would have been number 2, actually. But then I saw something this weekend that really changed that. But no, Sicario is. We've talked about it a little bit just because, Roger Deakins, I think, is the real star of this movie. I mean, his cinematography is just astoundingly beautiful. And I know this actually this movie came out at a time where a show on Netflix was making the rounds, Narcos, about the Medellin cartel and about Pablo Escobar. And it's very interesting. Earlier this year, Benicio del Toro played Pablo Escobar, a very restrained performance in the last days of Pablo Escobar's life. A movie I think was called Paradise Lost, if I'm not mistaken. Not a great movie, but then in this one he's playing on the other side, and he's playing that he's looking for revenge. He's using the DEA, Josh Brolin and Emily Blunt, to get to something far more sinister. They're going after the Mexican cartels. His performance is brutal. It's the antithesis of his performance in Traffic, and it's just. I know people have been talking about Blunt and Brolin, they're good, but this is Del Toro's performance in quite some time. Just a staggering role. And a level of brutality. He's supposedly one of the good guys, but wow. It's a movie that is just nonstop, and very well done. Just incredibly well done. I don't want to say too much about it, just because for the sake of time, but it deserves to be on this list. For me, at least, it deserves to be on this list.
And for me, it's number 11. I really wrestled with including it in the top 10, and it just missed out. But for me, again, Denis Villeneuve is not somebody whose films I've really responded to date. Mm-hmm. But this one I thought was incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
That great photography, of course, but also that Johan Johansson score. We were talking about dissonant kind of scores, but this is one of the great scores of the year that does do that. That does hit those kind of odd notes, and I love that the protagonist is strangely passive. Because I think that has something. There's something in there in that character that says a lot about the kind of hopelessness of the drug war and how we're kind of all pawns in something that we don't really understand the hugeness of, and of course out of the entire cast, which is everybody's superb in it, but it is Benicio del Toro that you really walk away.
It's an honest film. It's an honest film. That's what I appreciate about it too. It's just so honest.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah, definitely a great movie.
That's my 2 cents. It's a good movie.
Okay, no, that's a good. I like that. I like that.
That's my critical review. Okay, so number 3 for me. I guess that's what we're up to. I won't spend long on this. My number 3 is Brooklyn, and I love it how I'll say that I love that it was about a girl that was trying to find her place in the world. Mm-hmm. I thought it did that beautifully and so honestly and tenderly and with great compassion and empathy for its characters. And there's great humanity in every character in the piece, which I think is wonderful. And I'll tell you my favorite moment, and then we'll move on. My favorite moment is near the end, where she breaks it to her mother that she got married because her mother's been trying to fix her up so she'll stay in Ireland. So she finally breaks it to her mother that she got married. In any other movie, you would expect to knock down, drag out, and her mother to be like, oh, my God. But her mother loves her, and her mother knows that her daughter has to become her own woman. She knows that in her head, but she doesn't want to lose her in her heart. But her reaction is so beautiful. in that she just wants to know, is he nice? I thought that was so gorgeous, a human moment in that movie. It moved me very much. And it's just such a hopeful, I really respond to good-heartedness in films, and this movie has it in spades, so I can't help but recommend that as one of the top films of last year for me.
Oh, great choice.
Well, number 2, I guess we're up to number 2, so number 2 for me is 45 Years, Andrew Hayes' movie about the sort of suddenly crumbling relationship between Charlotte Rampling and Tom Courtenay, which I think are the 2 performances of the year. Absolutely right down the board, the 2 great lead performances of the year. It's so haunting; it almost feels like a ghost story. So, in that way, it's I so respect the movie for not going certain places, not complicating it with some kind of speculation that maybe Tom Courtenay had something to do with his former lover's death or whatever. It never really goes there. That would have overplotted it. Instead, it leaves you to wonder about the possibilities. And of course, I love Andrew Hayes' writing and the economy of the movie, in that it's only 90 minutes long. It could have been a lot longer and a lot more torturous. And it speeds by, even though it's a very laconic kind of film. And absolutely, Charlotte Rampling is the MVP, as great as Tom Courtenay is as well. Charlotte Rampling's performance here is just otherworldly in its detail and its restraint. And let me just also say, too, the movie has the single greatest final shot of any 2015 movie, which that final moment right before the credits rise, you're just devastated because you're listening to that song that plays over it, and it's been a song that's been mentioned all the way through the movie, and then you're starting to realize what that song really means to the Tom Courtenay character, and how that even the song that they first danced to on their wedding night, even that has been sullied by this revelation of Tom Courtenay's past. What a great movie! There's just this is what I go to movies for, and I just can't express how much I love it. It's just so superb. I can't even stand it. So 45 Years is my number 2 movie of the year.
Number 2. So there's one that's ahead of 45 Years for you.
Yeah, I'm actually tempted to just throw out mine. I want to hear what yours are, but I mean,
Okay, Jerry, you're number 2.
Okay, my number 2, we've already talked about The Revenant. I'll just say this. Please give Leo the Oscar. He deserves it. You guys wouldn't give it to The Wolf of Wall Street. Please give it to him for this. He gave it all. Just give it to him, God damn it.
No.
Okay, that's all.
I think it's going to be a riot if he doesn't win.
I love everything about them. I just you feel like, and you're absolutely right, Saving Private Ryan is a great comparison. You just feel like there are times you just feel like you're actually in the middle of the movie. I mean, you feel like you're there. I mean, it's so intense.
There's something that Leo's doing.
Yeah.
And I thought about this today when I was looking at that still that we have of him for this show. There's something that he's doing with this and The Wolf of Wall Street, where he is up until this point, post Gilbert Grape, it feels like he's been a very restrained actor in a lot of ways. It feels like he's trying his best to break out of, to be more instinctual, to kind of break out of being that kind of chained up actor,
right?
To be a lot more primal with his work, and I feel that with these last 2 movies that he's done, big time.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Django.
for sure.
Wouldn't you even say in Django he's?
Yeah,
that might have been a breaking point for him, in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
I just think the deeper he gets into adulthood, and the more he sheds that boyish kind of quality, the better he becomes. And that's, that's just it,
Yeah.
Maybe The Aviator was maybe a breaking point as well, I think maybe The Aviator is kind of a bridge between between the two ages,
He has to, let's be honest. In The Wolf of Wall Street, he is in. If I'm not mistaken, almost every frame of the movie. I mean, he is that movie. I mean, and in The Aviator, it's more definitely not so much that, but at times it is. He is definitely invested in it, but it just seems like in this. Well, in this you also have great performances from a lot of other actors in The Revenant. It's just everyone is on their A game. Everyone is just superb. But it's just please just give this. I can't think of. I know there are a lot of great performances, but just please, he deserves it for this year. I cannot think of anyone else.
Just do it already.
Please. Pull the trigger.
Stop talking about it.
Yes, for sure.
All right, my number 2 is Love and Mercy.
Okay.
I didn't have really any investment in the Beach Boys prior to listening or watching the movie. Even though I like their music, I could appreciate it. But that's a big part of the reason why I love the movie is because it really takes you into the creative process of creating a sound, of interpreting, of giving life to what exists in your head, which is the definition of the creative process. So I love that about it. I love the performances in it. I thought it's the best that John Cusack has been in quite some time. I thought Paul Dano was obviously great. Elizabeth Banks was one of the female performances from last year that I loved the most in Love and Mercy. And by the way, my top 4 are all female. They all have great female characters in them. And in some cases, they're led by females. So I thought it was a good year for women in terms of that for me personally, my own movie taste. Love and Mercy, again, a very compassionate, humanistic, good-hearted movie. I like how it portrayed the demons that he dealt with. There's this great scene, probably my favorite in the movie, outside of the studio stuff, where he's separated from his band members in the deep end of the pool. That's literally where he is psychologically.
That's great.
Yeah, I agree. It was another movie that kind of tipped the typical musical biopic slate on its ear, really, and really gave us something quite different. And those studio scenes are so magnificent too, because there's never that. Like how in like a movie like I think back on like Ray, for instance, about Ray Charles, how they're listening to him do stuff in the studio, and then they're like, wow, you're breaking it wide open, you're doing something completely different. There's none of that talk in this, because you don't do they don't do that in the
right.
It's not real. It doesn't feel real. I don't think
a great point. That's a great point, because a lot of times when someone does something so progressive, it's not realized as such at the time. It's just realized, God, you're going to flame out big time. The perfect example of that in Love and Mercy is another one of my favorite scenes, where he's playing God Only Knows I Love You, How Much I Love You, on the piano for his father, and his father's completely apathetic to it. The most beautiful song one of them ever made, and no one around him appreciates it.
Yeah, and that struck me as a lot more real than somebody saying, "Oh my God, I've never heard anything like this." We already know that the stuff is great, or they wouldn't be making a movie. So we don't about it. So we don't need to hear them.
It's not the Nickelback story. It's not the Nickelback story.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And
that wouldn't be a bad movie. Okay. I agree generally in all the points that you said. Also,
I have to point out the very creative score by Atticus Ross, which you wouldn't think that a movie like this would need a score
right,
to it,
yeah.
but it has
right.
It has a great score to it, and also the sound design is really magnificent. The movie pulls you into what Brian Wilson is hearing in his head almost immediately. Like the moment that the film comes on, you're being pulled into that, and I really appreciate that aspect of it as well. So, I mean, it's right outside of my favorite movies of the year, and I think maybe its only weakness for me is I feel like Paul Giamatti is really overplaying that role. Really chewing that scenery as Eugene,
right.
whatever his name was. So, but
according to the character that Elizabeth Banks plays, she says, no, he got it.
Really?
Wow.
Okay.
You don't know.
Okay.
You don't know. Okay, Jerry, you're number one.
Number one of the year.
I had a big, thing. I always do this every week. I'm going to say something really profound.
Oh, no, is it going to be a tie?
No, it is. But I said profound. I didn't say tie. I said profound. Jesus Christ,
okay.
Don't get ahead of me. Don't get ahead of me, Dean. You're scary.
Sorry.
So, I really did, like Pauline Kael, I really did lose it at the movie. Movies are the closest thing I have to any kind of religion. Let's be very honest. That's very true. And I'll take movies over TV any day. I like TV. Don't get me wrong. There have been some great TV shows the last 20 years. But I'll take the movies. Yeah. I will take the movies any day over anything, really. And I tell myself every couple of years, especially when I got back from California, I'm done with the movies. I hate them. I despise them. I do this on a regularly monthly basis. I will go through this and just, rip my hair out or whatever. But then you go watch some of these. And every movie that we've talked about tonight on your list, too, are incredible films. Now, of course, I have not seen 45 Years, and I want to. And I want to see the Amelie, so I do want to see that. But every film, I think, represents that we've talked about tonight. I really do. So the movies, I'm playing a nostalgia card here. But the two movies I picked are no surprise, Mad Max and Star Wars. I didn't think I'd put Star Wars on the list. I really did not want to put it on the list for one simple reason. I've always said that to put it on any list, because as a kid, as a 6-year-old watching that for the first time in a movie theater is jaw-dropping. We loved movies before that, but and it was very encouraged in this house to watch movies and to watch a lot of movies. But when you go, when it says a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then the Star Wars thing comes on and it says, and it just says Star Wars when we first saw it. It never said a New Hope or any Episode 4 or anything like that. But you're just, wow, I did not know this. I did not know this existed. And then it happens a couple of years later with The Road Warrior. You're just like, oh my God, what is this? What have I been missing out on? And you're just blown away. You're just, these movies are pure escapism. There's a lot of stuff shade you can throw on The Force Awakens, and we're giving the movie a lot of leeway because I've never seen anything quite like it, because the previous 3 movies were so bad. We're just happy the movie has a pulse. We're just happy the movie has a pulse. But I think it's on the right track. But there's an emotional level in both films, Fury Road and The Force Awakens, that I can watch over and over again. And that's true of every film I've mentioned tonight on this list. But this is what it's all about for me. This is what said, hey, maybe you can do this. Maybe this is an avenue. This is telling stories. Storytelling is very important. And they're silly in times and everything, but that's what this is. This is my religion. Movies are my religion. I can't escape it. It is just and these movies really, these two just took me back to places I had not been in a good 25 years. And I'll take that. I will gladly take that.
Well, I
can't argue with that.
Mad Max particularly, we've talked about it many times just in terms of the energy of it, but also I admired that it did something different with the action movie that even the previous Mad Max movies didn't do, which is Mad Max is the MacGuffin in this movie. Mad Max is the movie isn't about Mad Max.
Not at all. It has nothing
it's about
to do with
the role. Yeah, about the role of the female in the modern action film or in action film in general. And I thought it did a great job at bringing that front and center and creating a great female presence in an action film.
Let me be very clear. It's the third act, I actually think, when he turns around to go get them and says, hey, we got to go back to the Citadel, where the movie takes on a completely different tone. Just to me, it really just brings it up a notch. Also, I think there's something else that needs to be said. I don't miss Mel Gibson. That's quite accomplishment. It's not that I'm not bad-mouthing Mel Gibson. It's just that Tom Hardy just fits into the role so perfectly. His mumbling has never been more appreciated in a movie before. And he does mumble, in this one.
Well, and plus it brings the most valuable player in those movies is George Miller.
Yeah,
everything else more or less could possibly be expendable, but not George Miller.
No, you're absolutely right. He does it better than he originally did it, which is, I find, that's what I can't get over. It's like he didn't miss a beat. He added new beats even, as you said. It's just incredible. I just can't. I really, and like I said, I was really, lumping Star Wars in, and I know I'm going to get a lot of shit for that. I don't care. It's just there's an emotional level in the movie that was so missing from the previous three. You never thought that would ever come back. It is, I had even said on the show when they first announced this new series that Star Wars was passé at that point. And I stand by that, but I was just really impressed with what they did and how they did it. And I think it's actually, a lot of people may disagree with me, I do think this is Harrison Ford's best role as the character. I really do believe that. I think if I have like little nitpicks here and there, I wish that Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford had more screen time together. I really, really wanted that, but you can only get so much, I guess. I should be grateful that they're in there at all at this point.
Yeah.
That's where I leave it for this year.
I think that's a great argument for having those two movies as your number one. And a very personal, for very personal reasons, and so I really respect that.
Thank you.
Even though, like I should say, like Mad Max is in my top 20, but low, like 15 or so. But my problems with it were basically on a script level. I really appreciate the original movies for having a wider array of interesting characters that I was invested in, and I was less invested in the characters in this one. But all that said, the action that goes on is astounding, and there's no denying that. And it's a movie that makes you positively giddy with the the sort of adrenalized movement that's going on in it. So for that reason, I can't ignore it. So
Okay.
Well,
we'll do Dean's number one last, because that's I don't even know what his number one is, but everybody knows what my number one is. That's listened to the show the past couple of weeks. So you'll be our grand finale, Dean. My number one is Carol. So from a surface level, just because no movie has destroyed me more than Carol. It's been years since I've walked out of a theater and just sobbed. But from a craft level, oh my God, it's just impeccable. The costuming, the framing, the feel of it, the grain of the Super 16, everything's just so beautifully expressed in that movie. Rooney Mara, I believe Rooney Mara deserves the Best Actress Oscar this year. I think she has a good shot at it, personally.
100%.
It's just a beautiful, wide-eyed performance. And I love the layers in the film from the very beginning, how the very beginning where that male character walks into the restaurant and sees them in conversation at the table and interrupts them. And then in the third act, you realize he interrupted the defining moment of their lives.
Right.
And it's about that. It's about looking at something from the outside and then looking at it from the inside, and how they contrast and how they mirror one another. Those two reflections. And I found those motifs throughout the movie, and I thought it brought out a very special quality. in the movie. Cate Blanchett's stronger in truth, but she does this role just as much justice as that one. I was so, it's a love story that I was so incredibly moved by, and this is my favorite movie this year. Blue is the Warmest Color was my favorite movie last year, I think it was.
Right. Yeah,
or maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's a lesbian movie coming out in 2016, but, I'm there. Because
it's a great choice. I mean, Rooney Mara, though, to me, I agree with you. I mean, her performance is just over the moon. I mean, it's just perfect. I mean,
it gets the ache of. I mean, it's such a great love story because it gets everything about it. It gets the giddiness, it gets the self-realization, it gets the confidence, it gets the terror, it gets the ache of it, where she has to pull over and vomit.
Right.
No, and nothing can kind of purge that, and it's so in a very artistic. It's like Adrian Lyne, but very artistic with meaning, very deep with meaning. It feels very tactile, and the moment that I always think of is when Rooney Mara calls Cate Blanchett, because Cate Blanchett has cut things off, and Cate Blanchett answers the phone, and you just see her fingertip on the phone as though she's about to hang up.
Yeah,
and there's just something so tactile about that. It's just a deeply emotional movie for me.
And a beautifully directed movie, and that a lot of it is shot through glass and with water on it and everything. To me, it almost feels like a movie about memory, as much as it is a movie about something that's immediately happening. It's almost like that this movie is a memory of something that happened in the past, and we're just not seeing the person remembering things.
Right.
That would have been lame to have had the older Rooney Mara remembering this thing. So instead,
it's taking you out of the movie. I think it's taking you out of the moment. For sure.
Yeah, and instead it has an immediacy, but. Yeah, it has that immediacy, but it also has that. It also has that patina of kind of something that almost feels far away, and I very much like the movie. I wish that I could have connected to a little bit more to the that the reasons why the two characters fell in love, because to me it feels more of like a surface romance, like it's a movie about sex, really, and I don't know that I like my movie romances to have a little bit more to it than just a physical attraction, and for me, I wasn't really quite sure why they were in love with each other, really. But
I understood a lot more from Rooney Mara's standpoint than Cate Blanchett's. I mean, I understood that Cate Blanchett represented a key for Rooney Mara to finally be the person that she has longed to be, which is herself.
Right.
And here's a woman that's brave enough to stand by it. And it has one of the great scenes also. I mean, in that respect, it's like Brooklyn, another movie about a woman trying to find her place in the world. But there's a great scene in the movie where Cate Blanchett is talking to her husband, the divorce proceedings. And she ends the conversation by saying, we're not horrible people, which I think is one of the most beautiful, again, humanistic moments of the past year for me. I was astounded by that monologue that she had in that movie.
It's a beautifully written movie, Phyllis Nagy, great screenplay, and another great work from Todd Haynes, who is really a master at this type of film. So
I love him. Yeah. Okay, Dean, your number one.
Number one movie of the year, one of the biggest hits of the year, comes from Pixar Entertainment, and it is Inside Out.
I love it. And it's a great... Yeah.
Pete Docter and Ronnie Del Carmen's amazing film about thought and emotion and how that plays out inside of our brains. It's the movie that really made me feel more a wider array of emotions than any movie out there. It makes me laugh. It makes me cry. It makes me think. I really walked out of the movie, and I suspect anybody else who was thinking about the film and not so concerned with. I get the impression that maybe a lot of parents are concerned about what their children are thinking about the movie. Well, let them deal with that. They can deal with it later on, It might be too much for them right now. I don't necessarily think of it as a kids movie. I think it's kid friendly, but I don't think that a lot of children are ready for it, although the smarter ones will be. But I think that it's a movie that's written with such immense care, not only for its characters on the outside world, but on the inside world as well. It's also, how can you not love a movie that has a kids movie that has a call out to Chinatown in it, where it's forget it, Jake, it's Clown Town. It's that kind of thing, and the the repeating joke of the double mint gum theme being stuck in her head, and I really, when I walked out of it, I thought this, I deal with depression in my life, and it's a daily struggle, and it really gave me some kind of insight into how my own thoughts are being processed, and how my own thoughts about happy moments in my life have been affected by this disease, I guess, and it transformed the way I think about my own thoughts and emotions, and I suspect it did the same for many film goers. That alone is enough for me to recommend it, but also the visual aspect of it, the beautiful visuals in it, the incredible cast. I Phyllis Smith as Sadness and Richard Kind as Bing Bong are two of the greatest performances of the year, and then finally, just essentially, is as a movie about sadness and the necessity of sadness as a adjunct to joy, and sometimes as a pathway to it. I think that's his prime attribute. We don't get many movies about that subject matter, and certainly no movies for our children that are aimed at children, who I do think can benefit from thinking about these things. And
of course.
Great Michael Giacchino, is that his name? Great Michael Giacchino score. Great score. It really just took me on a literal roller coaster of emotion, and so that's and it's also the movie that I've gone back to again and again this year, and I still find no flaws with it, and it still makes me laugh and cry at the same moments. And so for me, it's just no contest. Inside Out, #1 movie of the year.
Good for that's a great choice. Definitely one of the best movies. I won't lie to you. As of Friday afternoon, it was on the list. Then I saw something on Friday night that I just really took. I love the movie, but it unfortunately got knocked down to number 11. And I trust me, I was agonizing over it. Trust me.
Right.
But Leo just grabbed my heart, took me on Friday night.
That's your kind of movie for sure.
Well, no, but I do love the Inside Out. I think it's actually one of the best Pixar movies in quite some time.
I saw it. Believe it or not, I watched a Pixar movie. I watched an animated movie. I liked it very much. So
yeah. Well, good. Well, that's our show. Did anyone write down the?
I wrote down all of them. I wrote down all of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you guys can feel free to display them on your Facebook or what have you.
Okay, well, I'm going to watch your
I'll be doing. I'm working on my my year-end article for Filmicability, so that'll include my other 15 movies.
Oh, okay, cool.
My movies of note and my movies of the movies that I thought were blah and the movies that I thought were terrible, and also the older movies that I discovered this year for the first time, and my favorite TV stuff as well. So.
And then don't forget, my indifferent list is very long. Just movies. I was indifferent.
Okay, so we'll be back next week. Our Art of the Documentary series continues all month, so check out all the episodes for that. There will be 20 episodes in all of that series. But then we'll be back next week with our Oscar prediction show, another annual favorite, because those nominations are released on Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday morning.
So that's
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
All right, fantastic.
Oh, thank
guys.
you. Wonderful time tonight. Wonderful show.